Hello and welcome to Not a Buffalo, the show where we discuss the science and technology that will save the world. My name's Ben. I'd like to wish you all a reasonable Christmas, an acceptable Hanukkah, and an unobjectionable Kwanzaa. This is Jack. He'd like to wish you a very happy Hanukkah, delightful Kwanzaa, and Merry Christmas. Jack, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Ben?
Yeah, I'm very well. I'm very much looking forward to Christmas, despite my... I'm only wishing reasonable Christmases and acceptable Hanukkahs and unobjectionable Kwanzaas.
That's all you can hope for, innit?
I really don't want to get people's hopes up. I feel like that you get a lot of hype around this time of year, and then, when inevitably you get another pair of socks or, some more shower gel for Christmas or as a present for whatever holiday you celebrate, it's inevitably disappointing. So I just hope people have a reasonable, acceptable, and unobjectionable holiday period. But I'm very much looking forward to it.
I like the way Christmas brings together the sort of, the rampant consumerism of late capitalism and a man dressed in the colours of a socialist.
It is a beautiful juxtaposition.
Yeah, it's the most wonderful time of the year. And in a sense, he sort of runs a kind of socialist model anyway, because, he lives in the, like Stalin, he lived in the snowy north, dressed in red, and runs an army of slaves.
No, he dressed in green. It was Coca-Cola that turned him red.
Stalin used to dress in green?
No, Santa Claus. Old Saint Well, actually, Saint Nicholas lived in Turkey.
The Netherlands and the Low Countries believe that Santa Claus lives in Spain and arrives by boat and train.
That's a lot more sensible. That's a lot more believable than saying, no, he goes to the north of the country where there's no sunlight for 6 months and tries to make toys up there.
And travels by flying sleigh. Much more believable that he travels by two forms of transport simultaneously and doesn't work for 12 months of the year.
Much more pragmatic people in the Low Country.
Yeah, much more you look at Spain and you go, oh yes, that's why he lives there. It's cheap.
And the nice weather.
So do you have any Christmas stories for us, Ben?
I'm going to start off with my only slightly tangentially related to Christmas stories. So Jack, I know you're a big board game fan, and have you asked for any board games for Christmas this year?
No, Santa stopped accepting my letters.
You can still tweet him though.
No, you see, I don't tweet very much.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Merry Christmas.
Well, going back to my Christmassy story that isn't really Christmassy at all.
Yeah.
Is psychologists at the University of Edinburgh tested more than 1,000 people aged 70 for memory, problem solving, thinking speed, and general thinking ability, and they found that...
And found Santa.
They didn't find Santa, but they did find that people who played games, board games and card games during their 70s were more likely to maintain thinking skills as they grew older. So it's quite nice.
That's interesting.
Also, apparently all of these participants had taken an intelligence test when they were 11 years old, and so they were able to take into account factors such as their education, intelligence test scores, socioeconomic status, and activity levels.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and they said it looks like if they played games throughout their life as well, then it helps maintain certain thinking skills, particularly, these were they played things like chess and some of the more complicated card games. I can't see the examples here now in front of me, but yeah,
probably bridge that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly, and it helped maintain their faculties, which kind of makes sense. I imagine if you play games, other strategic games as well, like Risk and things as well, which you and I are both big fans of, I imagine that would help. So I think that's a very positive news story. Next time you give your grandmother a board game this Christmas, and you'll be helping her maintain her faculties for many years to come. And give your toddler a board game, and you'll do the same thing.
Oh, that is nice. Yeah, I learned recently that Warren Buffett and Bill Gates actually play bridge together on like a fairly regular basis.
Oh yes, I saw that. I was watching one of the Netflix documentaries about Bill Gates, and that they just meet up and play bridge.
Yeah, this is the same one.
Yeah,
I watched this. We watched this weekend.
Yeah, it's quite good.
I really enjoyed it.
I did as well. It's weird. I've never seen him as just kind of the ideas guy who just kind of walks around. I've always thought of him as the CEO, founder, and kind of tech evangelist. But just being a kind of guy who walks around and thinks about the world's problems, I've never really considered him from that angle, and it's quite an interesting insight.
I already sort of knew that he did that because I read Bill Gates' Gates notes quite regularly. Those are the notes he takes on books that he's read. Like York Notes, basically, but by Bill Gates, so obviously better. But it's interesting to see it in like that kind of format and also the fact that you can really tell the guy interviewing him is an outsider to the process. You can tell some of the questions he asks him don't quite land, or like Bill thinks have obvious answers or whatever. It was a really interesting dynamic they had going on, because it felt very honest in a way that a lot of interviews don't. They feel sort of staged, but that one felt very, very genuine and very authentic, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Like it generally did look like they were just wandering around Bill Gates's grounds and things like that, and just having a chat and happening to film it. But just to conclude my story, my favourite thing about it, so it was it was run by the University of Edinburgh's Centre for Cognitive Ageing and Cognitive Epidemiology, but the professor was called Professor Ian Deary.
Oh,
I just like that he was doing a study of old people and his name is Deary.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
I just think that's really lovely. That's my first and only tangentially related Christmas story. So yeah.
He's a Professor Deary.
So, what's your first story for us, Jack?
So I'm going to go in the opposite direction of least Christmas to most Christmas, because as we speak, Christmas is hopefully there are more Christmases ahead of us than behind us.
I'd hope so.
As a species.
Are you saying that you think we will abandon capitalism and any last notions of Christian traditions, or are you saying that the world will end due to climate change?
I hadn't gone for the climate change option, but yeah, let's roll with that. I reckon climate change could probably wipe out Christmas, at the very least, even if it doesn't wipe out humanity. Yeah, so I'm going to start with least Christmassy, and then get to most Christmassy at the end. So, least Christmassy of my stories, we found 19 more galaxies which don't seem to have any dark matter.
Wait, they don't have any dark matter?
Yes. Which is either absolutely fantastic and means that the dark matter problem can just be knocked away, but it doesn't, because our galaxy kind of falls apart if you don't have dark matter in the model.
Are we sure we're not just incorrectly weighing the stars? Are the stars just like pretending to be slimmer than they are?
That could totally be the answer. Genuinely, like...
Okay.
Like, the problem essentially is that, like... To just explain dark matter very quickly, everything in the night sky is held in place and held together and moves in the way that it does because of gravity. Things which are larger exert a greater gravitational field and a greater gravitational pull on other things. Things which are small exert a small gravitational pull. The stuff in our galaxy isn't large enough to ensure that it moves and stays together in the way that it does. And next time you look up at the night sky, bear in mind, that's genuinely our best models at the moment. We do not have any way of accounting for why the galaxy hasn't fallen apart. That doesn't mean that it will. It just means that we're not very good at explaining why it's there. But
reassuring.
Yeah. But the usual solution to this is just to go, okay, so we need this much extra gravity. We'll plug this much dark matter into our equation. And that seems to work, and that seems to turn out a fairly stable amount of dark matter per galaxy in most cases. But not for these 19 dwarf galaxies which have been discovered.
Why are they dwarf galaxies?
Because they're little.
How little is it? Like, is there a less than 50 billion stars or something? Or?
Yeah, I don't know what the actual measurement is, but it is to do with like the size of the galaxy.
Okay.
But it's not all dwarf galaxies. There were 324 analysed in this study, but only 19 appear to be missing large amounts of dark matter.
How does that work? Because we can't measure dark matter, so how do we know it's missing?
We can measure how they interact with other galaxies as they go through the night sky, and how much they distort various other things like light.
And so these things are too light to have any dark matter. So does that mean we can't explain why they're kept together, or is it just that we found galaxies that the weight all adds up without the use of dark matter?
It's kind of both. So there's a little bit of dark matter in them, but it's much lower than we would expect, given like the average you'd see in a dwarf galaxy. But the short answer is we just don't know why they're that much lower. 19 out of 324, that's a low percentage, but it's still quite a lot to just be a random anomaly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's raising, as things like this always do, it's raising questions about how we put together our models for galaxies and how we put together our models for the cosmos. I just think it's very interesting that this kind of issue comes up year after year, and we still don't really have a good understanding for what dark matter is or why it's there. But yeah, that's my first story.
Beyond the idea that we had to balance the equation, and so we just kind of invented a bunch of stuff that we just don't know how to measure yet.
Yes.
Do we have any insight beyond that into dark matter? Or is it just kind of the convenient sort of unknown that we can plug into an equation to make them work?
Yeah, we have a little bit. So it seems to. I mean, this is basically a scientific way of saying the same thing, but they seem to. It seems to be some kind of particle which is available in large quantities, but interacts very weakly. So it only interacts really through gravity. So you see these distortions in space sometimes when galaxies pass through each other, or regions of space which appear to be empty pass through each other. So it's perfectly possible there are galaxies out there made up of just dark matter.
Wow. Oh, that's an interesting thought.
But of course, that's almost impossible to detect, because all you can look for is gravitational anomalies, and that's very hard to spot if that galaxy is zooming through space.
Yeah, no, I can imagine.
Not really got anything to interact with gravitationally out there. It seems like there really is something. I mean, we say dark matter is sort of invented, but it is, the maths adds up on it. And if we don't call it dark matter, we just call it X. It's that kind of thing. It's such an interesting problem, because it's something I remember reading about as a child, and it's still here. Still
one of the great mysteries. Well, I've just realised that my second story actually is also tangentially related to Christmas, because of course at Christmas we get a number of devices and we get a number of toys that need batteries. It's a better battery story, which I've definitely brought up before, but I think this is a really interesting approach. So this is from the US Department of Energy's Argonne National Laboratory. Basically, they realized that they want to try and figure out how to build a better battery. And so one of the things they're looking at is how to form better battery electrolytes. However, they have a set of 166 billion molecules that they want to test for electrolyte.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and so they started out with 133,000. Okay, hear me out.
Carry on.
That is a vanishingly small percentage of 166 billion. But they took the 133,000 and they put them into a computer model called G4MP2, because they have really catchy names. Gefumptu.
That sounds like an Edward Lear character. Gefumptu.
The
Gefumptu lived on an island. The island was all by itself until the Gefumptu arrived, and then it had someone else. Sorry, yeah.
Anyway, they're at this point where they had a very accurate database of 133,000 small organic molecules. They had to test 166 billion less than 133,000. But this G4MP2 model, Gefumptu model, would have required more computing power than exists in the whole of the planet, I think. It's a huge amount of computing time and power.
Epic.
And so what they've done is they've created a machine learning algorithm instead. And they're using it to relate the precisely known structures from the 133,000 and matching it to the more coarsely modelled structures from the larger data set. And although it's not as accurate, it allows them to basically get through all of the computations in a much less taxing way. So they're using density functional theory to provide some of the approximations of the molecular properties, which is less accurate than the Gefumptu.
Yeah, well, that's quicker, I guess.
Yeah, it's a lot. They can actually do it quickly, and they can do it with the existing computer power. And because it's 166 billion that they're testing, they will manage to kind of get through to the point where actually they can at least narrow it down to a subset that they can focus on, or that looks more promising, and then potentially test those further with Gefumptu. So it's just a really interesting way of machine learning helping to us potentially creating a better battery, just because it's able to crunch so much data that although it's a bit less accurate, it could actually be provide us better batteries, which means that what's the hot toy for this year? The Hatchimals? Or was that last year? Anyway, you can power them.
I have no idea.
Oh, you don't have the Late Late Toy Show, do you? Great old programme.
That was Northern. That was Yorkshire.
And what's your point?
Oh, sorry, I'd forgotten Yorkshire was a province of Ireland.
I can throw in random accents that are completely unrelated to what we were talking about if I want. It's Christmas. So there you go. You need to buy your nieces and nephews and children, you need to buy them board games, and you need to buy them machine learning algorithms so they can make better.
You need to teach them about machine learning so that in the dystopian world to come they can have a job.
This is a hopeful podcast, Jack. It's going to be a utopia, not a dystopia.
Oh yeah. Did you say a hittopia?
No, dystopia.
Oh, dystopia.
I don't know what a hittopia is.
I was imagining it's like whether there's a ruler, but the ruler is Britney.
Anyway, what's your second, more Christmassy story?
Can we like employ Oops, I Did It Again as the theme tune for this podcast?
I don't think we have the money to buy the rights to that song.
Okay.
We're making a grand total of nothing from this podcast so far. Mainly because we've been too lazy to try and promote
Maybe
it.
we should email Britney.
Actually monetize it.
Like, can we? Is she on Twitter? Can you tweet her?
I'll look her up on Twitter. You start talking about your next show.
So
Your
my
next show? Your next story.
Oh well. Okay, so my next show is called Shoulder Cast, and it takes place on a small patch of skin on Donald Trump's shoulder.
What? It sounds like you're giving some real
All
thought
of
to
the
this.
people who lived on that shoulder, their lives, thoughts, feelings, and that day when the aliens did land and everything changed. That's Shoulder Cast. My next story is about Miguel Watson. Now, Miguel Watson, and that's Watson spelt with 2 T's, is an electric eel who lives...
That is a great name for an electric eel. That is just, I really like it.
I know. He is on Twitter, incidentally. So if Britney's not, let's tweet Electric Miguel.
Britney is. Do you want me to just ask her now from the Not a Buffalo podcast if we can use Hit Me Baby One More Time?
Yeah, sure. Miguel Watson, the electric eel, who he lives in Tennessee at an aquarium in Chattanooga. He's better known for his Twitter because, you know, eels are big on Twitter at the moment.
Makes sense.
Yeah, you got to have a phase, haven't you? But what they've done there, the humans who tend to his well-being and serve his whims, they've wired up the aquarium Christmas tree with sensors into the tank. So whenever Miguel is electric, can I be electric too? That's what we should do. Tweet Oasis. Whenever he electrocutes the water or something in the water, the sensors respond to the pulses and they flip a switch that turns on the lights or makes the lights pulse as he's pulsing, which I thought was a really cool way of celebrating Christmas, is wiring up your eel's tank. I should stress he's not actually powering the tree. It's it's powered from the mains, but the on and off stuff is powered by him. So so
the Christmas tree kind of flashes in time to his mood.
Yeah, basically I guess it's a way of communicating, but in Christmas format.
That's quite cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's wonderfully
nice
it's a
story.
wonderfully unnecessary level of science is what I like about it. Like,
There's no such thing as an unnecessary level of science.
I don't know.
Anyway, the tweet is at Britney Spears. Can we use "Hit Me Baby One More Time" as a theme song for our podcast? # Christmas is a time for giving.
I feel like we should be nicer to Britney. She's been through a lot, and you know she's on the up again.
Should I use "please"? Is that what you're saying? I need to use. I haven't actually used "please." You're right. I should put "please" in. Can we please use "Hit Me Baby One More Time" as a theme song for our podcast?
Yeah.
Christmas. I mean, the chances of her actually seeing this and responding are very slim. She has 56 million followers.
I don't know. She's great. I like Britney.
Her last tweet is from 22nd of November. It got 127,000 views and 168 replies. So, I don't know. The chances of actually her seeing it. I mean, we'll see what happens. Can't hurt, can it? What's she going to do? Say no?
It's not so much what she'll do, but, you know, what if she does it again?
That was good.
Thank you.
That was very good.
Honestly, I feel like I could conduct an entire conversation in Britney Spears lyrics. I think unless you have follow-up questions about Electric Miguel.
How much is he getting paid to run a Christmas tree light show?
I think he's being paid in board and lodge.
Okay. I guess that's fair. I realised, and I'm ashamed to admit it, but I passed up a perfect chance for a segue.
I don't believe this. I don't believe you've ever passed up a chance for a segue.
Well, I had a story about Bill Gates, and I completely forgot. Again, I'm going to use that word tangentially again. I really like that word right now. Basically, this has nothing to do with Bill Gates, apart from the fact he gave a clean energy startup some money. And it's a secret clean energy startup. I don't know why it's secret. I think that might have just been to kind of draw people into the story.
What's it called?
It doesn't actually say the name. Maybe that's why it's secret. Oh no, Heliogen. There it is. Heliogen.
Okay.
And they have just gone public with some new technology that uses concentrated solar energy to get to temperatures greater than 1,000 degrees Celsius, which is 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. But they use what look like solar panels to generate this heat. But the nice thing about it is, by being able to generate this heat without burning anything, means you can use it instead of fossil fuels, because a lot of industrial processes need high temperatures of around 1,000 degrees, such as creating concrete and steel and cement and things like that. And if you can make them just with solar energy rather than having to burn fossil fuels, that's obviously really good, because it gets things hot enough to enable CO2 splitting and water splitting. And it's just a really, if we could roll this out commercially, it would really speed up the divestment from fossil fuels. And also the founder has another funny name. I swear I just find stories with people with funny names is kind of my scientific method. But the guy is called Bill Gross, but he's saving the world, and he got Bill Gates to back him. So Bill and Bill doing a great job.
Wait a minute, now are they, because if they're generating this with just solar panels, that must mean they're just collecting large amounts of power and going. Are they also using mirrors by any chance?
Again, the story doesn't go into a lot of detail. It looks like they could be.
Because what I'm thinking, as you're saying this, is maybe this is something like what they call concentrated solar thermal, which is basically like you just point more light into one direction and you intensify the amount of light in a given area, and that creates greater heat.
I don't think it is that. Just, again, this is the downside of it not being a scientific publication and it being kind of more of a good news thing. So it sounds like they've come up with a new bit of technology that allows them, and from the picture it looks like it's a field of solar panels that absorbs the heat, the solar energy, and then converts it to heat through a sort of tower mechanism. I don't think they're just kind of concentrating the light, but I could be wrong. So it's something I will maybe try and find out more about and publish in our Twitter feed after this.
That's interesting.
It's one of the things that renewables lack, is the ability to create large temperatures. So that's really good that they found a way of doing that. High temperatures, not large temperatures. Large temperatures makes no
large
sense.
It's the same. Like, it's a large. We use large numbers to denote high temperatures. It's also, I feel, the more I think about that, like large versus high, there isn't that much of a reason to have different words for them.
If you're specifically talking about height, though,
well, why not just talk about length?
Yeah,
like length is just height but rotated. Like,
all a matter of perspective, I guess. Yeah, if you rotate yourself, you don't even need to rotate it.
If I lie down, do I cease to be tall, or do I become long?
This is way too meta a conversation for a Christmas podcast. This reminds me of a story I was listening to the other day about the French have the Académie de Française, who guard the French language. But apparently one thing they've never been able to do is settle on how to say pencil in France.
I don't know if that's true.
So apparently different regions in France say different things for pencil. Like some of them say crayon, some of them say... I can't remember how to say them all in French now, but some of them say like grey crayon. Some of them apparently say crayon de papier, which means crayon made of made of paper, which is obviously ridiculous, but apparently some people say it. But apparently there's like 7 different ways of saying pencil, and no one can agree on it. You can get like crayon made of wood, crayon for paper, I think is one.
I mean, yeah, like a lot of people laugh at the Académie de Français, but the thing is, it's basically the Oxford Dictionary. It's just that the people involved wear swords.
My other favourite fact about them is you can only, in order to take up... So they have a number of seats. I can't remember how many seats they have on it. But in order to take up a seat, for a new member to take up a seat, is you have to say you have to do a speech complimenting your predecessor. And there's currently 8 empty seats because no one will say nice things about the 6 people who've died and left the seats.
Wow. Really?
Apparently.
I want to fact check this so much.
I would. I mean, I'm not going to say that I fact checked it. I heard it on a relatively reputable podcast, but I'd definitely check it for all the listeners out there if you want to check it as well.
Jumped on the Wikipedia page, and the first thing is under the membership section of the header. It says 40 members, and I thought, oh, okay, maybe this will tell me. And then I continue to the end of the sentence. 40 members known as les immortels, the immortals. They're known as the immortals.
Yeah. It's one of the most exclusive secret societies. Slightly
secret. It's not that secret, is
Everyone knows about it. Everyone knows about it, but no one knows how they do anything, so it's kind of a secret society.
Yeah, I mean, but that's basically Microsoft.
Good point.
So you could say that about any company. Everyone knows who Elon Musk is, but no one knows how he does stuff.
I just realised my camera was on the whole time and you've been looking at my forehead.
I have.
If you were so inclined.
Then that's exactly what I've been doing.
Well, we're meant to be doing something. I feel like we were meant to be doing a podcast or something.
Yeah. Once upon a time we were, weren't we?
Anyway, so have you got is this your last story now? And is it the most Christmassy one?
Yeah, probably. I thought.
Sorry, I just thought we'd move things along.
You did the last story. I was like, I'd completely forgotten your story about solar energy. I was like, what did Ben talk about just now? My last story isn't really news. It's an old thing that we've known for a long time, but yeah. So I thought it might be interesting to ask you: do you know why food tastes better when it's cooked and brown?
It releases the flavour enzymes.
You know, I know you're taking the piss, but that's actually not that far off.
Okay. Great, no, that story done. Let's move on.
When the flavor enzymes come out, flavase. Yeah, that's what the flavor enzyme would be called. Like most enzymes end in A's or T's. And lactose is broken down by the enzyme lactase.
Oh, there you go.
But yeah, so flavtase. Flavtase is released by a thing called the Maillard reaction, which is unrelated to ducks.
Wait. Does flavtase carry a massive clock around its neck?
I would imagine so, but only when it's like filming its rap videos.
Yeah. So sorry, these enzymes are made from ducks, you were saying?
Yes, so they're made from the the Maillard reaction is named for a Frenchman, but is unrelated to canard because it's canard, not mallard. And mallard is an English word for ducks.
For male ducks.
Whereas canard is a word for French newspapers. It means like le canard is like the tabloids in French. What are we talking about?
Something about cooking food.
Yeah.
And releasing the flavour enzymes, the flavtase.
Yes. But yeah, basically this is the science of Christmas dinner.
Okay, cool.
The Maillard reaction takes place on things like turkey. If you cook your roast potatoes in duck fat or something like that, then that will also happen. But it happens.
So it has to be poultry related.
Doesn't, but it needs proteins. It needs
okay.
I think it's sugars and amino acids is that's what's actually going on there. Is the sugars are reacting with the amino acids, and they create this thing called glycosylamine. I think it's glycosylamine and water as byproducts of that reaction, which is incidentally why the gravy off stuff like that tastes great, because it came out of this reaction. But yeah, it happens around 140 degrees C, which in Fahrenheit translates to learn a proper system.
Yeah.
Because seriously, like, how much freedom is there in Fahrenheit? Wouldn't it just be nicer to like understand the rest of the world, America?
Yeah, and just stop having stupid temperatures that make no sense. What temperature does water boil in Fahrenheit?
Oh God, isn't it something like 110?
212.
200. I was a million miles off. That shows you how much I use Fahrenheit. That really does.
Water freezes at 32.
Yeah.
Because that makes sense.
That's the bit I've never understood. Is like, I get that maybe 100 is an arbitrary point for boiling stuff, but why the hell is freezing point at 32? It doesn't make any sense. Like, wouldn't you have one of them pinned to a sensible point? But then what's great about Fahrenheit is that if you start there and you work your way out into the imperial system, the measurements get nuttier and nuttier. Like, UK shoe sizes are actually done in an imperial measurement, and the imperial measurement is a barley corn.
Yeah, I've always wondered that because I assumed it was inches, and then I actually measured my feet one day. I was like, this isn't right.
No, it's barley corns. That's how many If you are a size 5, you have 5 barley corns to your foot.
I mean, that's good to know, but also stupid.
I think it was actually based off an actual barley corn, which raises the question of who measured the barley corn.
I love how I googled what is the boiling point of water in Fahrenheit, and someone's gone, boiling point of water is 100 degrees, so to convert it into Fahrenheit, all you have to do is multiply it by 1.8 and add 32.
What a sensible system. I mean, I suppose that is a relatively painless conversion versus like kilometers to miles, where it's 1.6 or something like that.
1.6, yeah.
But then it's like it's not quite that, because it's like 1.62 blah blah blah, and you get to the stage where you think, is this just an excuse to have irrational numbers in your conversion system?
Have you seen the thing that's like, here's an easy way to remember how many yards are in a mile. You just do something and you get 5282, and that's how many yards are in a mile. And then someone just responds going, guess how many meters are in a kilometer? 1,000, because that makes sense. I was going to swear there. Family show. Apologies. I didn't swear.
Have you seen the Imperial? I think it's the Imperial Units article on Wikipedia. They have a diagram as like the picture for it, which is a sort of overview of the Imperial system. And I sort of thought, oh, that's really cool, but it's only an image. Wouldn't it be nice if I just had like a very simple system, which I could just plug in a number in any of the metric system measurements, and I get out the imperial equivalent and vice versa. I was like, this could be quite useful at some point. I sat down with the Wikipedia article and went, yeah, okay, I can make this. And about an hour into it, I realised that the image for the Wikipedia article is internally inconsistent in the conversions. It converts like one thing to, you go from barley corns to acres or whatever it is, and you multiply it by a million, and then you can go across from that, from acres into bilge waters, and then down from bilge waters to cadoufs and back again. And that square of conversions doesn't make sense. And it wasn't just like, at first I thought I'd done something wrong with my maths, and I was like, oh, maybe my conversions, maybe I've got a floating point error. No, the actual image that they're using for the article was, and as to my best knowledge still is, internally inconsistent, and no one's noticed because it's a terrible system. No, like if you did that, if you pulled this on metric, it would be immediately obvious what was wrong. But for the imperial system, there's no way of knowing.
I mean, it explains so much that's wrong with the world is the imperial system.
Yeah,
everything imperial is just terrible. Do you want to finish off your story then, or is that? What was your story? I can't even remember.
It was basically the Maillard or Maillard reaction, and how that's going to be like making Christmases nice this year. When you messaged me to say, oh, bring Christmas stories to the podcast, I genuinely, I was like, oh, this will be fun. I'll look up some Christmas stories, and I really struggled to find anything Christmassy, because it's like the beginning of December right now, and I live in a country where we don't really do Christmas, which is lovely, but but it's extraordinarily difficult to find Christmas science in the best years because science doesn't really operate to a seasonal calendar.
Yeah. What's more effective at modifying behaviour, the promise of a reward or the fear of punishment? So
see, that's it. That is science.
That is science, and that's very interesting, but I didn't want to go into that because, as I said, there's another podcast that's already done it very well, and I won't do it justice.
Yeah, it feels wrong to steal from other podcasts, doesn't it?
I'm kind of out of stories. I guess I just wanted to wrap up by asking you what your highlights have been from the year, if podcast related or not.
Well, Ben, I love the fact you've used wrap up, because it's a fantastic Christmas pun.
That's true. I didn't even think
what
of
can
that.
I say? It's nice to tree here. I don't have any Christmas jokes really. All my jokes are about how great Britney is. Maybe we should just make it a Britney cast.
No,
not even.
I'm not as big a fan. I mean, it's not what I expected of you, Jack. To be honest, knowing some of your music tastes, it's not what I thought.
You sound amazingly disappointed as you say that.
I'm an incredibly judgmental person at heart. Really, I have to say one of my highlights from the year has been doing the podcast. Mainly because it's given us a great chance to catch up and have interesting conversations and just keep in touch more regularly, which I've really enjoyed. So
yeah, I've really enjoyed this project, and I will continue to enjoy it in the new year.
Hooray!
I hope, unless the Krampus gets you, Ben.
I've been really good this year, and definitely not worthy of the Krampus's attention. So
that's good.
Do you want to take us out? I think we need to do the outro.
I'd love to. What is our outro?
Thank you very much for listening. You must know it by now. We've been doing this for 12 months.
Halfway, it doesn't feel that long.
It
feels
doesn't.
like we've recorded all of these in a single day, and that I'm trapped I feel like a reporter in a small town in America who needs to keep reliving until he lives his best day.
One of these days, we'll do the perfect podcast episode that will blow every other podcast, not just our podcast, every other podcast out of the water, and then that will be the perfect day, and you'll finally get to move on to level 2. Sorry, day 2.
What is level 2? It sounds like a club, but like one that doesn't have very high ambitions.
Yeah, that's it. Really, it's a club. You get in there when you hit level 2, and they basically teach you how to do a pension form.
It's an admin club.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like here's where we finally teach you how to adult.
That's like a perfect vision of purgatory, isn't it? It's like, if you've not been that good on that badge, you just go and do admin for a few years.
A few thousand years.
Yeah, a few thousand years. We take care of all the pay. That's probably how they run the Heaven operation, actually, is that they use recently dead souls for admin.
I'd imagine so. Have you got the outro? Because I'm getting dirty looks for Tara because dinner's ready.
The real question is, will we leave that in? Thank you very much for listening. Please subscribe to the show to never miss an episode, and rate and review us wherever you have the power to do so. If you'd like to get in touch, we are at Not a Buffalo Pod on Twitter, Not a Buffalo Podcast on Facebook, or contact us through our website, notabuffalo.wordpress.com. Bye.
Merry Christmas.
Oh,
and goodbye.
oh.